And the story goes kind of like this. They sit in front of a therapist, and the therapist asks this main question to both of them, the same question. And the therapist says, to the man, you know, um, who did you see clean the toilets in your home? And the man says, his mom. Now, when the therapist asked the wife, who did you see clean the toilets in the home? And she said her dad. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Closing Open Wounds with Cleisha. I am Cleisha. Welcome. Come on in. Listen, I came across a topic, in my day to day, so I wanted to bring this to your attention. What do you guys think about gender roles? What do you think about gender roles in a relationship? Maybe getting married, courting, what do you think about gender roles? And is it something that you need to discuss early on? Well, if you ask me, now, I'm not an expert, but I've been through a lot when it comes to marriage and relationships. And I think that it's very, very important that we have these conversations early on. Why? Because it just weeds out the process. I mean, it really lets you know, hey, is this person good for me? Is this going to work? What do they expect of me? What are you expecting from that person? There is a lot that needs to be discussed. Now, of course, when you're just meeting someone, you want to keep it lighthearted, nice banter, going back and forth. You're getting to know one another. You're going out for coffee. You're going out to eat. You're going to dance, movies, whatever you like, right? So you do that. But you do want to have these important conversations early on, in my opinion, okay? You want to keep it as light as possible, but at the same time, you want to lay, the line out. You want to put what you believe right out there on the table right away. I mean, for instance, right? Let's just say I heard the story of a couple that they were married and they went to therapy because they were having issues in the home. The husband had issues with his wife because she was always complaining, about her complaining. So he was complaining that she was like nagging and stuff like that, right? And her complaint, the wife's complaint, was that, he wasn't helping out around the house. There was just certain things that she needed him to help on. She was working. They had children, and it seemed like all he thought he had to do was just work and come home. He didn't really do much extra unless, he felt like it, or he just didn't want to hear her mouth. And the story goes kind of like this. They sit in front of a therapist, and the therapist asks this main question to both of them, the same question. And the therapist says, to the man, you know, who did you see clean the toilets in your home? And the man says, his mom. Now, when the therapist asked the wife, who did you see clean the toilets in the home? And she said her dad. So we grow up with these expectations and with these notions that, hey, my mom did this, my dad did that. So this is how marriage is. This is how it's going to look. And that's far from the truth. Our parents have their systems of what they did and what worked for them, but that doesn't always necessarily work for us. So when you're courting someone, getting to know someone, it is very important to kind of bring these kind of conversations up just so you can get a feel of what's going on. And then you can say, well, I would need you to do this, or I would need you to do that. You can explain yourself. And you want to do that early on. I would hate to, and this has happened to me, you get into a marriage and, you find out that, there were some uncommunicated expectations on you. That is not a good feeling at all. I've been there. I've done that. And that's why it's so important to communicate. I know we don't want to have these communications, but you need to talk about finances. You need to talk about children. You need to talk about the holidays that you want to celebrate, you need to talk about religion. You need to talk about, are you guys going 50-50? When it comes to the bills, what happens when you have children? Who's going to do what? Now, sometimes those roles do reverse. Sometimes, things can get switched around, but you're a team. But it has to be discussed. And I believe that it should be discussed early on. It would save a lot of heartache and pain. Now, I will say this, you can never fully know a person. I know a lot of men, I've heard on different podcasts that, they may be dating a woman for a year or two to see if she's the right fit, to get to know her better, but you can never fully know someone. How do you fully know someone that is constantly evolving? Or we should be evolving. How do you know a person? You can't. And there's on another note, there's a lot of people, wasting people's time. If you don't know within a year or two, then that's just not your person. Now, I do believe that, this time in social media and where we are in the world, I do believe that people think they have options when it comes to dating and relationships and finding a life partner. I think a lot of us are looking for that perfect person where there is no such thing. And we're never satiated. It's like we never have enough. It's never good enough. Things worked back in the day with our parents because you know what? They didn't have social media. They worked with what they had, and, they loved the people that they were with. Now, they had other challenges as well, because Pop could have a whole family across town and you wouldn't know you wouldn't be the wiser. But, it was different times back then. But now today, just swipe left, swipe right, and you got your next option right there for you. And it's really false options, so I mean, that's just how I feel about it. Discuss these things early as possible. Now, the challenge is, and this has happened to me where, I might be seeing someone, and, they have certain stances and certain ways of belief that are contrary to how I feel. And at that point, all parties involved, or you particularly, need to, if it's not for you, you might like the person, you might get along great, you may have a lot in common, but it's not going to last if you have different points of view, or some people are just the way they are, and stuck in their ways and whatnot, and that's fine. We all have our non-negotiables. But the thing is, when you come to that road, when you come to that overpass of, what, this isn't going to work, then you do have to walk away. And that is one of the hardest things that I have ever had to do, is to walk away from someone who I saw a future with. I can't speak for the other person, but I definitely thought, in past, I definitely thought like, hey, this is a nice person, we could build a life together. And, just from the way of thinking or where they are in their lives, hey, it just doesn't happen. And it's cool. It's fine. But you really need to not prolong the inevitable. I think a lot of times we waste time, or we think that we can change someone's mind. And you will soon find out that that is far from the truth. We can't do that. We are who we are. And that's just what it is. So if you ask me, have those uncomfortable conversations early so you really know who you're dealing with. See how they are when they're angry, when things are not, 100% good. See how they talk to you when they're upset. That is one thing I went through in, my last marriage. When everything was great, it was great. But when it was bad, it was bad. It was really, really bad. And those signs were there before I got married. Those signs were there. Now, back then, he used to apologize for it. And I'm not saying it was physical, but even emotional abuse or verbal abuse, or just being, mean, or, avoidant of uncomfortable conversations, those are all abuse. No matter what you say, no matter what you think, it is abuse. And those signs are there early on. And we really have to be honest and say, if this person never changes, if they stay just like this, will I be happy? Will I be okay? Will I stay married? And that is the question. That is the question that we must ask ourselves. We talk about dating and relationships and marriage a lot on this channel. So anytime I come across something, or I have a conversation with a colleague or a friend, I'm definitely going to bring it to the table here with you guys and say, hey, what do you think about this? We need to wisen up. And I say this all the time, I've made the mistake, so you don't have to. Learn from your cousin's mistake. You know what I mean? Like, learn from me. Okay. I have been through it, and still I'm processing through some things, and, just trying to make it out here, and like I said in one of my last videos, I do desire, at my core, I do desire to be married again. But when I look at society and the unrealistic expectations that relationships, seem to require these days, I don't know, y'all. I don't know. I'm hopeful, but I'm not anxious. You know, um, it's hard out here. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's it. I just wanted to share that with you. So, obviously, if you came across this video, you needed to hear this, those questions. And if something that is said does not sit right with you, doesn't sit right with your spirit, then yes, you need to get up from the table. And I know it's hard, and I know you like them, and I know they're great cash, probably looks good on paper and very attractive. They may even got good credit score. It doesn't matter. You still are going to have to walk away. And, we're not looking for perfection. We're just looking for effort, so we can, enjoy our lives and everything like that. And I pray you find it. Thank you guys for chatting with me for a little bit. You guys know when things come to my mind, I got to talk to you about it. I got to get it off my chest. And, you're my only friend. I love you guys so much. I'll see you guys on the next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Help me grow this baby. I love you guys. Bye.